Hello everybody, it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We've reached another Friday, so of course I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. So it is the last Friday in March, and thus the final Friday in Women's History Month. As such, I wanted one last chance to go ahead and highlight some very prominent figures in women's history. So today we are looking at films and a television series starring three iconic women in the entertainment industry. One is a genre-bending artist whose career has spanned decades and has evolved in each of those decades. Another has played an industry-shifting character that essentially created an entirely new archetype that we now see even in today's films and TV series. And the very last helped shift the mainstream viewpoint of how women should be portrayed on television. Now, as always, these three recommendations are available to you entirely for free with the use of your Milan-Berlin library card. They are all going to be found on Canopy. And without any further ado, let's get to the recs. Okay, as mentioned, all three of today's recommendations are available to stream on our Canopy service, and the first of those is the 1987 rom-com Moonstruck. Moonstruck, of course, stars Cher, but we'll get to her a little bit later. The film itself is a story that follows an Italian-American widow, played by Cher, who decides to accept a proposal from this long-standing boyfriend she has, who she admittedly likes, but doesn't love. She ends up having to invite his estranged brother to the wedding, and in meeting this younger brother, played by Nicolas Cage, she ends up falling in love hard and fast. So the rest of this movie is sort of her dealing with all of the fallout, the emotional fallout, the actual fallout between the family members when they inevitably find out, and navigating some interesting superstitions brought on by her first marriage with the new world. And it's just a really, really ridiculously fun film to follow. Yes, it's got Cher, who is always going to add a whole lot of flair to whatever project she's doing, but at the end of the day, it's very, very well acted on all fronts. There's some great chemistry between Cher and Nicolas Cage. There's actually some really interesting chemistry between Cher and Danny Aiello, who plays the sort of bumbling boyfriend. And you've also got an award-winning performance by Olympia Dukakis in here. And I'm a huge fan of Dukakis. I think she's really, really great and really subtle and kind of weirdly in a lot of films that I've watched throughout the years that I don't really think about until I'm like, oh wait, that is her, and she did an amazing job again. But yeah, so this is one of those films that's just, whether or not you're a Cher fan, if you like romantic comedies and funny and legitimately funny ones at that, you will like Moonstruck. But anyway, one of the reasons I wanted to highlight Cher is because she's such an icon. She got her start in the 1960s as part of the Sonny and Cher music duo. I mean, I Got You Babe. Who does not know that song? At least from a certain era. But then that duo also gave birth to a really skillful variety show with the Sonny and Cher show. So, you know, a woman with arguably like an 8 to 9 note range has mastered a whole lot of entertainment aspects. She moved from Sonny and Cher to the variety show, then to a solo career, of course, when Sonny and Cher split. And then every decade of her solo career, she's also sort of defied the odds and sort of reinvented herself as far as the kind of music she sings, the way that she performs it, how she dances, the whole package. And then in the 80s, we really started to see her expand as far as being a really serious actress. Cher won the Academy Award for her performance in Moonstruck, but this isn't the only really lauded performance that she's put out there. She's been in a lot of other movies, and she's always done a really serviceable job. What's really nice about Moonstruck is that she did have chemistry with both like her boyfriend, so you could understand why they were together at all, kind of. And then, of course, with Ronnie, Nicolas Cage, it was immediately like electric. And I think that's part of what really pulled people in. It was, of course, directed by Norman Jewison, who, has come from a long line of really brilliant directed films. And as I mentioned before, not only was Cher awarded with an Academy Award, but Olympia Dukakis also received an Oscar for her performance. Now, even today, Cher continues to defy the odds and to have a massive, massive following. And I do think it's because she's refused to allow the industry to tell her how to behave, how to present herself, how to sing, how to project her path within her career. She's just done her own thing and she's followed her own path, and it has proven to be very successful. There's something very interesting about her as an artist, as a performer in general. So yeah, that's why I decided to pick Moonstruck. Not only is the film itself excellent, but the woman who stars in it is a really interesting figure within the entertainment industry, and she's definitely carved out her own niche and has helped other women, I think, who are interested in doing the same. Okay, my second recommendation is 1999's science fiction comedy Galaxy Quest. Originally, I picked this film specifically because of Sigourney Weaver, but really, it's a fantastic recommendation at any given time of year. It really is just a fantastic film. Now, Galaxy Quest is very clearly a send-up of Star Trek, the whole franchise, but specifically that first original series. And in this movie, we are following the film characters present day. The vast majority of these characters were once actors in a show, much like Star Trek, that ran only a handful of seasons, but has sort of attained cult popularity. It's one that many of them, that's the big project that they've been known for. That's when they hear that actor's name, that's what the character they think of. It's very, very definitely a Star Trek send-up, complete with like archetypes that you saw within Star Trek, the cast. So you've got the leader of that show, who is definitely quite arrogant. He thinks he's the best thing ever. He definitely thinks he's the only reason that the show was popular. Clearly a nod towards certain behaviors from the Star Trek cast. You've got an actor within the cast who is fairly bitter about the fact that he always considered himself a serious actor, and then it's this one, lowbrow film series role that people call him out over. You've got like the ditzy female character. There's so many archetypes. I find the Will Wheaton mirror to be particularly interesting, because most of these characters are definitely a nod towards the original series, and then the child star, who's now an adult and still sort of like living off of that childhood fame, is from the Next Generation series. So in any case, that element is really, really very alive and well within the film. That said, you don't have to be at all familiar with Star Trek to enjoy the film, because those personality types are pretty relatable. They're not anywhere out of the norm. A lot of times the star of any show, whether it be science fiction, drama, whatever, you'll see a sort of attitude attached to that person, real or not. That's definitely like a persona that is, I think, projected onto that kind of performer. So again, relatable no matter what. And it really is in the chemistry between all of the cast members that the magic totally happens. In particular, I love the meta level of layers on the Sigourney Weaver character. Sigourney Weaver plays the sort of, I hesitate to use like the sort of dumb blonde character. But that is exactly the archetype that they are portraying there. She is an actress who just sort of stumbled into success because she was very pretty, quite physically attractive to the large masses, without having to have much in the way of acting chops. And that has been her career. She's most known for that role, but that's the kind of character she's played ever since. And when you consider who Sigourney Weaver is and what other characters she's played. I love the meta layering on there. It's funny, and it's also sort of pointed as well. So you have this layer of parody on top of genuine cast chemistry, brilliant acting. Like, some of the more outrageous characters that are a bit over the top work so well. I have a group of friends who I also absolutely love this movie, and we quote certain things, it's 25 years down the line. And some of us haven't really watched it that many times. Granted, I have watched it a lot, but some of my friends haven't, and they still remember some of the zingers from this. It is that well written. And it's also got this fantastic sort of sci-fi adventure vibe to it. The storyline itself is really creatively done, and it's fun to follow along with the adventure. Anyway, as I had mentioned, I specifically picked this piece because of Sigourney Weaver, and because I liked that sort of weird meta level layering that was on the role. So one of Sigourney Weaver's biggest roles, and I'm sure that this is going to be one of those roles that she's remembered for at the very end as well, as was, Ellen Ripley from the Aliens franchise. Ellen Ripley was arguably the very first really, really intense, tough action heroine. That's not just me saying it. Time Magazine has said it, Variety. I looked up references. It was a thing. She was the first woman action hero to really resonate with the masses, and she was amazing as Ripley. She really was. And it's a character that spanned so many films. Even in the really not great Alien movies that Ripley was a part of, she was always awesome. It was never her that was the problem. So Ellen Ripley first appeared in the first Alien film, Alien, which is one of, to me, the best sort of horror films, I think, as far as genre crossing that has ever been made. I love the concept of horror in space, on a spaceship. What is more terrifying of the concept that you really can't get away? You are in deep outer space. No one's coming to get you. You either figure out a way to fight this horrible foe, or it's over. And she doesn't rely on anyone else. There's nobody that she can depend on that's supposed to be bigger and stronger, who has more military knowledge or anything. She's just really dependent on herself, and that is how the character survives. And it's awesome. It's ridiculously awesome. And when you think of all the female action heroes that have come after her, without an Ellen Ripley, maybe there wouldn't have been a Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Maybe we would never have seen Linda Hamilton playing in the Terminator films. I'm specifically thinking of more like Terminator 2. You wouldn't have seen countless other female heroes, potentially, that were definitely heavily influenced by the character of Ellen Ripley, a smart, focused woman who is on her own and manages to fight back against some much greater evil. The fact that she created an entire archetype, that's pretty impressive. So when you consider everything that the Ellen Ripley character is, and you put her on top of Lieutenant Tawny Madison, the character Weaver plays in Galaxy Quest, it's a mind bender, let me tell you. And it's very funny, and it's perfect casting. They knew exactly the casting directors knew exactly what they were doing when they put her in this role, because Weaver is absolutely beautiful. She's always been stunning. She's wicked tall, statuesque, crazy good facial structure. And yet the thing that we think about is this crazy strong, physically powerful science fiction heroine playing, a character that has never relied on any of those elements. And I really love that about it. I really love that about it. It works just as far as storyline, but it also works on the level of fans who know. Then if you know, you know. I love that. I really do. It doesn't take anything away, but it definitely adds something if you are a part of that select crowd. So yeah, if you get the chance, watch Galaxy Quest. Fantastic movie, no matter what. But definitely think about Sigourney Weaver and how her role is involved in the character she plays in Galaxy Quest. Okay, my final recommendation for this week aired on television from 1961 to 1966, and that is The Dick Van Dyke Show. Just as a heads up, you can watch the entire season 1 of The Dick Van Dyke Show on Canopy, but it will use 5 of your 15 monthly tickets. That said, that 5 tickets lasts for an entire 14 days, so you have 2 weeks to watch the full season 1, and I think that's a pretty good deal. So why did I pick The Dick Van Dyke Show? I mean, clearly it's The Dick Van Dyke Show. Well, let me just give a little background. So, in The Dick Van Dyke Show, we are following the misadventures of a comedy writer, Rob Petrie. Rob Petrie is very clearly modeled after Carl Reiner, who wrote and created this show. And originally, The Dick Van Dyke Show was supposed to sort of focus on Rob's life both at work and at home, with a heavy leaning towards his work life. I mean, Carl Reiner was he played one of the characters in the work life, and that had been such a huge part of his own existence. That's where everyone thought the show was going to go. Let's lean into the comedy writer's room, right? The thing is, the relationship between Rob and his wife Laura was so lauded and loved by the American public that the show ended up deciding to shift. Yes, of course, they had his work life, but his home life provided just as much entertainment, just as much time on screen, especially scenes with Laura, and she became a larger and larger character because she was interesting to people. And the reality is, she was quite the game changer as far as current at that time female characters on TV. She was someone who anyone could like, but she wasn't what we had been seeing on screen as the sort of devoted housewife had been, or at least in a lot of cases. So again, remember, 1961, who were the wives prior to that we were seeing on screen a lot? June Cleaver, Leave It to Beaver. The primary vision that I have of June Cleaver from stills, from watching syndication, is a woman in a beautiful sort of tea-length dress with an apron. Like a very specific coiffure, a very it was very much the image that I had in my head of the perfect 1950s housewife. Ozzie and Harriet, very similar vibe. This 1961 wife was not that. She was very different. And what was appealing is she had as many misadventures as, say, like a Lucille Ball style character, but she also had a very relatable nature as well. It wasn't quite so over the top. She felt much more real to a lot of people. And from everything that I've read, that was one of the things that was appealing. Even her wardrobe was coded to be a very modern nod to what we were seeing as sort of like the iconic wife, because who was in the White House in the early 60s? The Kennedys. Everywhere you looked, Jackie Kennedy's image was. So Laura, instead of these like very, very structured dresses, she was in, fitted capri pants, really nice styled twin sets. Her hair very much emulated Jackie's. It was very much a nod to modern woman, and I think a lot of people really appreciated that. In addition to sort of like the more normal relationship she seemed to have with her husband, that relationship was approachable. It was something that you might either already have or want to have. The dynamic was so very different from those other couples, and it's very much a shift as far as entertainment industry goes, and I think that was a big deal. So yes, it is the Dick Van Dyke Show, but Mary Tyler Moore, who played Laura Petrie, really helped to make that show iconic. She really was a massive part of it. You don't shift the vision for a show without having some serious chops behind it. And of course, the Dick Van Dyke Show helped launch Mary Tyler Moore's career as Mary Tyler Moore Show. So, as mentioned, Dick Van Dyke Show ran from 61 to 66, and then in 1970, we saw Mary Tyler Moore in her own self-titled show, The Mary Tyler Moore Show. It ran from 1970 to 1977. Now, this one is not available on Canopy, but is absolutely worth a watch because this was another game changer. She was a young single woman in her 20s, and rather than focus on what we had seen in the past, which was, how does the single girl sort of develop her romantic relationships, it was really about the single working girl, how her relationships at work were really affecting her, the highs, the lows. There were some moments that were absolutely hilarious and some that were really quite more heartfelt, and it was a really great show to watch, to sort of see how these different arcs shift and change. In addition, it's just a fantastic cast. I mean, Ed Asner, who doesn't love Ed Asner? And of course, Mary Tyler Moore herself. You've just got a ton of people working together who just knew how to bounce humor off of each other's skill sets. So I decided to pick the Dick Van Dyke Show because of Mary Tyler Moore. She has changed sort of the way the mainstream could look at women, and how, you could break the mold. You could go off and do your own thing. The Mary Tyler Moore Show was her baby with her husband. The two of them put together a company just so they could make that show. She wasn't going to have somebody else create something for her. She wasn't going to go out and look for something else. She wanted to do a show that she wanted to have control of. And that's hugely impressive, especially considering the time. And anyone who helps shift a mainstream viewpoint, I think they get props in my book. So, okay. If you are interested in seeing sort of these tonal cultural shifts, make sure you check out the Dick Van Dyke Show. One, it's just a great show. It really is very funny. It's ridiculously well written. I mean, Carl Reiner is a genius for a reason. Dick Van Dyke is a fantastic performer, and the relationship between Rob Petrie and his wife is definitely a highlight. So make sure you check out season 1 on Canopy. Okay, that is it for this week's recommendations. I love putting these lists together in general, but putting them together for Women's History Month is especially fun. This episode in particular. If you have any recommendations for films or TV series starring iconic actresses, please pop those below. As always, thank you so much for joining me, and hopefully I will see you next week. Bye-bye.